The first time I truly saw Aiden McCoy was the day my favorite ceramic pot, the one I had bought at the Sedona Farmers Market, shattered into pieces on my front porch. I had overwatered the lavender again. The terracotta, swollen and heavy, simply split open, spilling dark potting soil and tangled roots all over the welcome mat that Liam had specifically chosen for its correct minimalist aesthetic. I was on my knees, trying to scoop up the mess with my bare hands, feeling the hot sting of stupid, frustrated tears welling behind my eyes. Over a plant, over everything. Need a hand? The voice was low, quiet, completely devoid of pity. I looked up, shielding my eyes from the weak Seattle sun. Aiden was standing on the sidewalk, holding a grocery bag in one hand. He was wearing his usual faded olive drab jacket, maintaining that same upright, observant posture I had already come to recognize. He was my neighbor from 2 houses down, the quiet guy who lived alone with a German shepherd. "I think this is beyond fixing," I said, trying to laugh, but it came out as a watery gasp. "The plant can be saved," he said, setting his grocery bag down on the concrete. He didn't ask, he just sat down next to me on the porch. His hands, broad and scarred, were surprisingly gentle as he untangled the lavender roots. "What's done for is the pot. You've got a container with no drainage. The roots rot. The pot bursts. Simple physics." "I'm not very good at keeping living things alive," I muttered, more to myself than to him. He shot me a quick, calculating look. "You seem to be keeping yourself alive, so you're not doing too bad." He stood up, holding the rescued plant in his hands. "I've got a spare pot. Unglazed. It breathes better. I'll bring it over." "Oh, you don't have to. It's taking up space in my garage," he said, already walking away. 5 minutes. That was Aiden. He offered help not as some grand gesture, but as a simple statement of fact. There was a problem, he provided a logistical solution without the drama. I took the clean, unadorned terracotta pot he brought back, our fingers brushing for a fraction of a second. His were rough, calloused. "Thank you, Aiden." "Really? Can I bake you something as a thank you?" A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. "I hear your lemon bars are legendary." "Mrs. Gabble talks too much," I said, but I returned the smile. It was the first genuine smile I had felt on my face in weeks. "She talks too much, but about good things," he replied with a brief nod. "Enjoy the rest of your day, Michelle." I watched him walk back to his modest, immaculately kept craftsman-style house. 20 minutes later, Liam's Tesla glided into the garage next door. I was at the kitchen sink, washing the dirt from my hands. "Smells like a nursery in here," Liam said, shrugging off his designer blazer. He kissed my cheek, but his attention was already glued to his smartphone. I had a disaster with a planter. Aiden, the neighbor down the street, helped me repot the lavender. Liam's thumb stopped scrolling. Aiden? The guy who still dresses like he's deployed? What was he doing here? Helping. He was walking by. Liam made a dismissive sound in the back of his throat. "That weirdo in the surplus gear. Honey, I pay people to do those things. Don't fraternize with the help. It sends the wrong message." "He's not the help, Liam. He's our neighbor, and he was being kind." "Kindness is for people who can't write checks," Liam finally said, looking up with his cold blue eyes to examine my face. "You look tired." "Another headache?" "Another headache. The corporate code for saying you're not operating at peak performance. The code for saying the stress of trying to have a baby was showing on my face." "Just a long day," I said, turning toward the stainless steel refrigerator. "Salmon with lemon herb butter for dinner." "Sounds good?" "Perfect," he replied, already back to his screen. "Just something light. I've got a conference call with Series C investors from Singapore at 7:00. The digital thermometer on my nightstand read 98.8. I marked the tiny dot on my chart, connecting it to yesterday's dot with a thin blue line. The line was frustratingly flat. No ovulation spike. Again. I had been charting my basal body temperature for 26 months. Taking prenatal vitamins for 36. I knew the clinical smell of the doctor's office, the feeling of the cold ultrasound wand, the aggressively compassionate tone of Dr. Evans. Michelle, at 35, with your labs, we're looking at diminished ovarian reserve. The odds of spontaneous conception are below 20%. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I think we need to have a realistic conversation about IVF, or perhaps donor eggs. I hadn't told Liam about the 20%. I pitched it to him as we need to try more aggressive interventions. He wrote the check for the first IVF cycle without blinking. It failed. The second cycle produced 2 embryos. The transfer failed. The silence in our house after that second negative test was a physical weight. Liam didn't yell, he just shut down. He worked later. Traveled more. He stopped asking about the charts. I tried to fill the silence. I baked for the neighbors. I volunteered at the public library. I got my real estate license online, then a project management certification, little boxes to check, proving that I was still a functional, productive member of society, not just a defective biological vessel. I saw Aiden often. I brought him lemon bars, and in return, he fixed the jammed drawer in my kitchen. I collected his packages when he traveled for work, and I shoveled his driveway when it snowed, hours before the landscaping service Liam hired ever showed up. We didn't talk much, but his presence was a quiet anchor in the churning uncertainty of my life. Once, he found me crying over a batch of burnt cookies, a trivial trigger for an ocean of grief, and he simply brewed a pot of strong black coffee and sat with me at the kitchen island until I stopped crying. He's a good man, I told Liam once, after Aiden had repaired a section of our cedar fence damaged in a windstorm. Liam was reviewing a contract. Who? Aiden. He fixed the fence. He wouldn't take any money. He probably needs it, Liam said without looking up. The guy lives alone in a house that hasn't been updated since the 90s. Drives a 10-year-old Ford truck. He's a charity case, Michelle. Don't encourage him. I didn't argue. Arguing with Liam was like screaming into a hurricane. It only left you breathless and defeated. Our third wedding anniversary fell on a cold, rainy Tuesday. I had made a reservation at the Pink Door in Pike Place Market, the exact spot where we had celebrated our engagement. I wore the emerald green dress Liam liked. I spent extra time on my hair. I lit candles. Liam was late. He texted me at 7:15. Running behind. Start without me. I drank a glass of Sancerre. It tasted sour on my tongue. He arrived at 8:30. His energy was sharp, electric. He'd had a good day. That used to mean good things for us. Sorry babe, he said, kissing my cheek. He smelled of cold winter air and expensive bourbon. Closed the Vararitos deal. Massive margins. That's wonderful, Liam, I said, and I meant it. His victories were supposed to be our victories. We didn't eat. He talked about the deal, about the new VP he was poaching from Amazon, about the potential for a massive Series C funding round. I nodded. I asked the right questions. The ghost of our unmentioned anniversary sat between us, a third guest at the table, right through the dessert course, a tiramisu I barely touched. Finally, he went quiet. He looked at me. Truly looked at me, for the first time in weeks. The assessment in his eyes was cold, clinical. It was the look he gave a business proposal he was about to reject. Michelle, we need to talk. My stomach plummeted. This isn't working, he said calmly, as if commenting on the texture of the dessert. This. Us. The project. He couldn't even say baby or family. Liam. We knew it would be hard. Dr. Evans said we could try another protocol. Maybe a surrogate. The words tumbled out, desperate. Rehearsed in my head 100 times. He held up a hand. I've run the numbers. Financially, emotionally, temporally. The ROI just isn't there anymore. The doctor said your odds are under 20%, right? He finally said the number, letting it float in the air like a guilty verdict. I need an heir. Michelle, a clear successor. It is a biological and strategic imperative. This endless hoping, these procedures, it's degrading for both of us. I felt the room tilt. Degrading? I whispered. Yes, chasing a statistical improbability. I built a tech company from the ground up by recognizing when to cut my losses and pivot. This is a loss that needs to be cut. I stared at him. That familiar, handsome face now looked like an absolute stranger. I am a loss? The situation is, he clarified, as if that made a difference. I've asked my legal team to prep the paperwork. It's clean. You'll receive a financial settlement. The prenup is generous. Given the circumstances, the prenup, the one I had signed, full of love, trusting the man who promised to build a life with me. My lawyer had insisted on one clause: after 3 years, in the event of a no-fault divorce, I would receive a percentage of the growth of our marital assets, not just a flat sum. Liam had agreed, calling it a bonus for a successful partnership. The agreement states that after 3 years, I get 20% of the growth of our shared assets, I said, a thread of steel suddenly finding its way into my voice. That is the deal, Liam. He smiled then. A thin, icy smile. Do you honestly think that piece of paper matters? Test me. I will bury you in legal fees until you are living in a studio apartment in Renton and moving back to Arizona to live with your mother in under a year. I will drag this out in the courts until you're 50. Is that what you want? The threat was delivered with the exact same tone he'd used to discuss the salmon. Calm, assured, factual. This was the man who had bankrupted a competitor, purely out of pride, the man who once bragged about making an ex-employee's life so miserable they had to move out of state. He could do it. And he would. You would do that to me? The question was pathetic. I already knew the answer. I am protecting my interests. As I always have. He slid a manila envelope across the table. The papers are in there. The settlement offer is more than fair. Take it, Michelle. Walk away with some dignity. Dignity. A hysterical laugh clawed its way up my throat. You are throwing me out because my ovaries don't work right, and you're telling me not to make it ugly? Keep your voice down, he hissed, glancing around the restaurant. This is a business transaction. Nothing more. Sign the papers and be out before the end of the month. The end of the month. That was 2 weeks. You should have seen this coming, he said, signaling the waiter for the check. The house is in my name. The accounts are mine. Take the offer. It's more than you brought to the table. The drive home was silent. The rain streaked across the windows like tears. Inside our house, his gleaming, minimalist house, I felt like a ghost. I went to the guest bedroom, the one we had painted a soft, hopeful yellow. I didn't sleep. The next 2 weeks were a blur of silent devastation. I moved like an automaton. I packed my clothes, my books, the few pieces of art that actually belonged to me. I left the furniture, the dishes, the shared life. It had never really been shared. Had it? Liam was barely around. He stayed at a boutique hotel downtown, or perhaps with the newer, more fertile model he undoubtedly already had lined up. The cruelty of it was so massive it almost felt impersonal, like a natural disaster. On the morning of my move, a gray U-Haul truck sat in the driveway like a hearse. I was carrying a heavy shoebox, my arms shaking, when a voice spoke up behind me. Need a hand? Aiden. He was standing there in jeans and a gray Henley, hands in his pockets. This time, I didn't fake it. The tears I had been holding back finally broke. I nodded, unable to speak. He didn't ask questions. He just started loading boxes. He worked with a quiet, efficient strength, treating my belongings with more care than Liam ever had. He had brought his own moving blankets and ratchet straps. He knew how to pack a truck. Where to? He asked. When the house was finally empty of me. A temporary apartment in Ballard. It's all I can afford right now. He nodded. You drive. I'll follow. He did. In his old Ford truck, he followed my rented box of misery all the way across the city. He helped me unload in the freezing rain, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs into a cramped, beige apartment that smelled of stale air and profound disappointment. When the last box was inside, I stood in the empty living room, shivering. Aiden, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. He looked at me with a steady gaze, seeing everything, the pain, the fear, the utter humiliation. You're going to be okay, Michelle. I don't feel okay. That's because you're in the middle of it. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out, a simple, unglazed terracotta pot. Inside was a freshly planted sprig of lavender. This one has drainage. He set it on the bare kitchen counter, a tiny speck of life in the void. See you around. With a final nod, he left. I slid down the wall until I hit the cheap linoleum floor, and I cried until my ribs physically ached. Later, when the internal storm had reduced to a dull ache, I opened my banking app. The settlement money was there. A sum that felt enormous and pitiful at the same time. More money than my mother, a public school teacher, had seen in her entire life, but a fraction of what I had helped Liam build. A handout compared to the future I was promised. My name was already removed from the joint accounts. The credit cards were canceled. My phone vibrated. Mom. Hi. Sweetie. Was just thinking about you. How's the weather up there? I took a deep breath, pasting a smile onto my face that she couldn't see, but could hopefully hear in my voice. I was good at that now. Hi, Mom. Just drizzling. You know Seattle. How's the book club? As I talked to her, lying and saying everything was fine, just perfectly fine, I stared at the little lavender plant on the counter. Drainage. So the roots wouldn't rot. So the pot wouldn't explode. Maybe Aiden was right. Maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe I had just been in the wrong container, with nowhere for the rot to escape, until the pot finally broke. Now I was sitting on a cold floor with $1,200 to my name that wasn't earmarked for rent and despair, and a single, fragile plant someone had thought to pot correctly. It wasn't a beginning. It was an ending. But as I sat there in the silence of my new, solitary life, a small, treacherous thought whispered to me, endings are just containers that have finally broken. What happens to the plant inside is up to me now. The beige Ballard apartment didn't improve with time. It absorbed the gray Seattle light and the sound of my own breathing, amplifying both. The settlement money was a ticking clock in my bank account. $3,200 left for everything. Rent, groceries, gas. The overwhelming uncertainty of existing. I gave myself exactly 48 hours to wallow. I ate ice cream straight from the carton. I watched trash reality TV. I cried until my skull throbbed. On the morning of the 3rd day, I showered. I put on the most professional outfit I owned, a navy blazer and slacks that felt like a costume, and updated my LinkedIn profile. The headline mocked me from the screen: former executive liaison and household manager seeking administrative opportunities. It sounded pathetic. Because it was. The job hunt was a special brand of humiliation. My 3-year gap as a fertility-focused housewife was a black hole on my resume. The elite Seattle world of tech startups and investor meetings was closed to me. I was a liability now. The ex-wife of a rising star. I finally landed a temp job as an administrative assistant at a small, family-owned marine supply company near the Ship Canal. $18 an hour, no benefits. The owner, a gruff guy named Hank, looked at my vastly overqualified resume, then at my shaking hands during the interview. Divorce? He asked. Without malice. I nodded, unable to speak. My sister went through one. Took her a year to stop flinching every time a door slammed. You start Monday. The work was numbing. Data entry. Scheduling freight deliveries, answering phones with forced cheer. Anderson Marine Supply. How can I direct your call? My fingers, which had once organized charity galas and curated wine lists, now clumsily operated a 10-year-old office phone. My coworkers were nice, but in a distant, cautious way. They had heard rumors. Seattle's social circles, even the desperate ones, touched at the edges. I saw the pity in their eyes when they thought I wasn't looking. The absolute worst part was running into ghosts from my past life. At a coffee shop near Pike Place, I bumped into Stacy, the wife of one of Liam's junior partners. Her eyes widened with the horrified glee of a rubbernecker at a car crash. Michelle. Oh my God, so good to see you. Her hug was entirely performative. We've missed you at the club luncheons. How are you? I'm doing well, thanks. Just keeping busy, I said, the automatic lie polished to a shine. Well, I heard about you and Liam. Just terrible. She leaned in, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. He's dating that real estate agent. You know, the one who sold the Petersons' condo in South Lake Union? Blonde. Very athletic. She paused, letting the image sink in like a blade. And pregnant, they say. She's already showing. Some women are just built right, I guess. The words were a physical blow. I felt the air abandon my lungs. I managed a tight, hollow smile. I'm happy for them. I have to go, Stacy. Client meeting. Bye. The $6 latte I had just bought tasted like ash. The message was crystal clear, delivered through Stacy's perfectly glossed lips. You were defective. You have been replaced by a superior Model 1 that is already fulfilling its primary function. I sat in my used Honda Civic, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, waiting for the hot, shameful tears to come. They didn't. There was only a cold, echoing void. I threw myself into survival mode. I clipped coupons. I bought generic brands for everything. I learned that the QFC marked down their rotisserie chickens exactly at 8:00 p.m. My world shrank to the four walls of my apartment, the cluttered office at Anderson Marine, and the aisles of the QFC on Market Street. It was there, in the cereal aisle, that Aiden found me again. I was standing there, calculating the price per ounce of generic cornflakes versus name-brand Cheerios. Math that. 3 years ago, I would have considered entirely beneath me. I felt a presence beside me and looked up. He was holding a hand basket containing a half-gallon of milk, a loaf of sourdough, and a single, perfect avocado. His eyes flicked from my face to the 2 boxes in my hands. The generics are almost identical, he said quietly. They're made in the exact same plant. I blinked, startled. Aiden. Hi. I didn't know you shopped here. I don't usually. My regular spot was out of this bread. He paused, looking down at my cart. Generic pasta. Marked down chicken. Bruised discount bananas. How are you settling in? The polite answer would be, fine, thank you. But the truth, pushed out by a week of swallowed pride and the venom of Stacy's gossip, spilled out on its own. I am calculating the cost per ounce of breakfast cereal, Aiden. How do you think I'm settling in? He didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly. I see. He looked at my cart again, then, at me. You forgot the heavy cream for the lemon bars. Helps the filling set better. I stared at him. I haven't baked since. I know, he said simply. Then, before I could react, he took the generic corn flakes out of my hand and placed them in his basket. Get the Cheerios. The box lasts longer. He turned and walked toward the dairy section. Stunned, my face burning, I put the Cheerios in my cart. I finished my list quickly, actively avoiding him. When I reached the checkout, the teenage cashier was already scanning my items. I swiped my debit card, holding my breath. Insufficient funds flashed on the terminal. My heart stalled. That was impossible. I had checked my account last night. I swiped the card again. Same error. Is there a problem, ma'am? The cashier asked, a hint of annoyance in her voice. The heat rushed to my face. I must have miscalculated. I'll just put some things back. It's covered, a calm voice said, beside me. Aiden had materialized, his few groceries already bagged. He handed the cashier 2 crisp $100 bills. Keep the change. Aiden, no, I whispered, mortified. I can't let you do that. You're holding up the line, he said, without an ounce of harshness, gesturing to the frustrated shopper behind me. He grabbed both bags, his light one, my heavy, humiliating one, and walked toward the exit. I followed him, stammering. I will pay you back next week. I swear. There must just be a hold on my account. He stopped next to his truck, which was parked right next to my Civic. Liam froze the joint accounts. The card you used was probably linked to automatic drafts. It's a standard power play. Call your bank. The cold, clinical analysis of his words pierced through my panic. Of course. Liam was tying up loose ends, erasing me. I leaned heavily against my car door. God. I am such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're in a war you didn't even know you were fighting. He opened my passenger door and set the grocery bags on the seat. Go home. Call the bank. Eat something other than cheap cereal. He handed me his bag, the avocado and the bread. Trade. I like cornflakes. He got into his truck and drove away, leaving me standing in the damp parking lot with a bag of groceries I hadn't paid for and a lump in my throat, the size of his engine block. A week later, my 12-year-old Civic died for good. It gave its last shuddering gasp in the pouring rain, right in the middle of the Ballard Bridge during rush hour. I had my hazards on, wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour, surrounded by a symphony of furious car horns. Tears of pure frustration mixed with the condensation on my face. This was the final punchline to the cosmic joke. I couldn't even afford a tow truck, let alone a repair. My phone was at 5% battery. I scrolled through my contacts. Liam's name was blocked. My mother, I couldn't tell her. Then I reached the only other number in Seattle I knew by heart. I had saved it after the grocery store incident, under the name Aiden Grocery Money, $175. He answered on the second ring. McCoy. Aiden? It's Michelle. Michelle Anderson. I am so sorry to bother you. But my car just broke down on the Ballard Bridge and I don't know who else to call and my roadside assistance expired. The words rushed out in a frantic wave. Drop a pin and text me your location. Right now, he said, his voice rock steady. I sent it. I'm so sorry, I texted. 15 minutes. Lock the doors. Do not get out of the car. He arrived in 12. I saw the headlights of his truck cut through the rain, pulling up right behind me with amber strobe lights flashing on his roof. Professional grade. Not the kind you buy at AutoZone. He stepped out into the deluge instantly, a dark silhouette in a tactical rain jacket. He spoke to the traffic cop who had just pulled up, flashing an ID from his wallet. 2 minutes later, a flatbed tow truck was backing up, guided by Aiden using sharp, precise hand signals. He opened my passenger door. Come on. I'm taking you home. I was soaked and shaking. My car jack is taking it to his shop. He's honest. He'll call you with an estimate. He guided me to his truck, holding an umbrella over my head. The interior of his Ford was immaculate. It smelled of leather and black coffee. Complete military order. Not a single gum wrapper or receipt in sight. We drove in silence for a few blocks. Thank you, I finally managed, my teeth chattering. I seemed to be making a habit of needing to be rescued. You're not being rescued. Your transportation failed. You called for a logistical solution. I provided one. He glanced at me. You're freezing. He reached into the backseat and pulled out a heavy gray fleece jacket. It's clean. Put it on. It swallowed me whole. The sleeves fell past my hands, but it was incredibly warm. It smelled faintly of pine and something undefinably masculine. Safety. The estimate, I murmured. I might not be able to. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Literally. A ghost of a smile brushed his lips. It was the first flash of real warmth I had ever seen from him. He didn't take me to my apartment. He drove to a discreet little garage tucked away near the Ballard locks. The sign read Jack's Precision Auto. A man in grease-stained coveralls waved us into a bay. Aiden got out, spoke to Jack in low tones, and spent a few minutes under the hood of my car with him. He nodded, pulled out his wallet, and handed Jack a card. When he got back in the truck, I was ready for a fight. Aiden. No. Absolutely not. I will take the bus. I'll figure it out. Alternator and water pump are shot. Starter is on its last legs. Jack is doing it for $800, parts, and labor. That car is totaled, Michelle. Putting more money into it is a bad investment, $800. The number felt like Everest. I don't have $800. I do. I cannot take your money. You aren't taking it. You are accepting a short-term, zero-interest loan from a friend who doesn't want you catching hypothermia waiting for the D-Line bus in January. His tone left exactly zero room for argument. Jack will have it ready tomorrow at 5:00. I'll take you to work, and I'll pick you up. Aiden, why are you doing this? The question came out raw, desperate. You owe me nothing. I was just the neighbor who baked you things. He stayed quiet for a long moment, staring out at the rain-slicked street. Because someone did it for me once, he said, his voice dropping lower. After my wife, Sarah, died. I wasn't doing well. A guy from my unit just showed up. Fixed my roof. Didn't ask, just did it. He said, you'd do the same for me. He finally looked at me. You would have done it for anyone. I've seen it. You picked up Mrs. Gabble's mail for a month when she had her knee replaced. You organized the block party no one else wanted to deal with. You brought lemon bars to the weird loner down the street just because he glued a pot back together. He put the truck in gear. Consider it community service. He drove me to my building. As I reached for the door handle, he spoke again. There's a diner. The Skyline. If you want to talk tomorrow after we get your car. Or not talk. No pressure. I looked at him, this quiet, serious, inexplicably kind man who seemed to look at the wreckage of my life and offer not pity, but practical, strings-free solutions. I was so incredibly tired of being alone. What time? 6. Okay. The Skyline Diner smelled of old coffee, frying onions, and red vinyl booths. Aiden was already sitting in a corner booth with 2 mugs of black coffee waiting. Without asking, he had ordered me a slice of apple pie. It was perfect. We made stiff, awkward small talk for a few minutes. The car was running fine. Work was work. The rain wouldn't let up. Then, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the normalcy of the diner, the heat radiating from the mug, or the pure, unadulterated decency of the man sitting across from me. But the whole story came pouring out. Not the sanitized version I told my mother. The ugly, humiliating truth. The basal body temperature charts, the failed IVF rounds. Liam's cold, boardroom-style analysis of my defective biology. The threat of burying me in legal fees. The pregnant real estate agent. Aiden listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer platitudes. He just listened, his steady, calm gaze locked onto mine. When I finished, the pie untouched and the coffee cold, I felt hollowed out. And now I'm the pathetic divorcee crying in a diner in front of her old neighbor. I am so sorry. You didn't sign up for this. Stop apologizing for existing, Michelle, he said quietly. But firmly. He stirred his coffee, the spoon clinking softly against the ceramic. I lost my wife to cancer 3 years ago. Glioblastoma. 8 months from diagnosis to the end. He delivered the information in a flat tone. The grief had long since hardened into a permanent scar. She was kind. Like you. The kind of person who always looked for the good first. Liam is an idiot, and he is myopic. He traded a diamond for a piece of glass that just happens to be fertile. It is his loss. Not yours. His words, so direct and unshakable, broke something open inside me. The carefully constructed wall of "I'm fine" collapsed entirely. A sob escaped me, and then another. I cried right there in the booth, shaking, silent tears for the life I had lost. For the children I would never have. For the crushing loneliness of it all. He didn't try to hug me or shush me. He just slid a stack of paper napkins across the table and waited. When the storm finally passed, I wiped my face, thoroughly embarrassed. I feel so stupid for believing the fairy tale. For thinking I was enough. The fairy tale is a lie, he said, not unkindly. Real life is what happens when the dragon shows up. It's about who stands next to you to fight it. He pushed the plate of pie toward me. Eat. You need calories. I took a bite. It was sweet, tart, grounding. Real. What was her name? Sarah. A genuine, soft smile touched his eyes for the first time. She was a librarian. She hated my cooking. She loved terrible action movies. You would have liked her. I think I would have. We sat in a comfortable silence for a moment. Then he said, Liam's lawyer sent you another letter. I froze. How do you know that? You told me he was threatening legal action. It's what guys like him do. They hate loose ends. It was the logical next step. His tone was completely objective. You haven't opened it, have you? It's on my kitchen counter. I'm terrified of it. I shouldn't be. It's a bluff. You don't know that. He has money. He has lawyers. I know his type, Aiden said. Bullies escalate until they meet resistance. And so far, you haven't offered any. He leaned forward slightly. There's a pro bono legal clinic at the UW Law School, top-tier law students, supervised by tenured professors. They live for cases like this. Asymmetric warfare against a deep-pocketed bully. It's good practice for them. Let them be your resistance. A fragile, terrifying spark of hope flickered in my chest. You think they'd take it? I know they would. He took a final sip of his coffee. My house has 2 empty bedrooms, rent is $0. Before you say no, listen to me. You are paying $1,200 a month for a box that is crushing your soul. That money could go toward a lawyer, toward savings, toward getting you back on your feet. The rooms are just collecting dust. And no, he added, looking me dead in the eye. This is not a proposition. Separate rooms. Separate lives under one roof. A strategic alliance. I stared at him, completely dumbfounded. Aiden. I can't move in with you. The neighbors. Liam. What will people think? The neighbors already think I'm a weird loner, and that you're a tragic figure. This isn't going to change the headlines, and Liam can think whatever the hell he wants. He forfeited the right to an opinion when he handed you papers in a restaurant. He held up a hand, ticking points off on his fingers. 1. Financially, it makes sense. 2. It gets you out of a space that is actively harming you. 3. My dog could use the company. 4. I travel for work constantly. You'd have the place to yourself most of the time. The dog? I asked, latching onto the only normal part of this insane offer. Ranger. German Shepherd. He's an excellent judge of character. Also likes lemon bars. He stood up from the booth, dropping more than enough cash on the table to cover the bill and a generous tip. Think about it, no pressure. The offer stands. He gave me a brief nod. I'll wait by the door while you call the legal clinic. Then you can tell me what they said. He walked to the entrance, giving me space. I sat in the booth with the remains of the pie, feeling the world tilt back on its axis. A lifeline, thrown by the most unexpected person imaginable. Not a romantic gesture, but a tactical one, a strategic alliance. I pulled out my phone. My hands were only shaking a little bit. I searched for the number for the UW Law Clinic. I took a deep breath, and I dialed. The silence in Aiden's house was different. It wasn't the hollow, echoing emptiness of my apartment in Ballard. This was a lived-in, comfortable silence. Like a well-worn leather jacket. It was broken only by the steady ticking of an analog clock in the hallway, the soft click-clack of Ranger's nails on the hardwood floors, and the occasional hum of a furnace that actually worked. My first week was an exercise in careful, deliberate cohabitation. I took the front guest room. It was sparse, but pristine. A queen bed with a navy quilt, a sturdy oak dresser, a window overlooking the quiet, tree-lined street. It felt incredibly safe. Aiden's room was at the far end of the hall. His door was usually shut, a boundary I had no intention of crossing. I insisted on paying for groceries. He agreed, but then I would come home to find bags from Metropolitan Market on the counter. Artisanal cheeses, wild-caught king salmon, the exact brand of dark chocolate I had offhandedly mentioned liking once. "Aiden, this is twice what I gave you for the grocery budget," I said one night, holding up a package of duck breasts that cost more than my entire weekly lunch allowance. He was wiping down the already spotless kitchen island. It was on sale. They don't put Sonoma duck breast on sale. Then I miscalculated. He didn't even look up. Consider it a cohabitation tax for not leaving hair in the shower drain. I tried to contribute where I could. I cooked simple, hearty meals, pot roast, chicken pot pie, massive salads. He ate everything with silent appreciation, and despite my protests, he always washed the dishes afterward. We would sit in the living room after dinner, him reading reports on an encrypted tablet, me studying for my real estate continuing education credits with Ranger sprawled between us. It was peaceful. A fragile, newly found peace that I was terrified to break. The outside world, however, was not peaceful. I noticed the looks when I went out for a run. The curtains twitching. Carol Gabble, the neighborhood gossip, accidentally bumping into me at the mailbox. "Michelle, dear, we were all just so surprised to see you move in with Mr. McCoy." Her smile was pure saccharine, hiding a razor blade. "A very practical solution, Carol. Just temporary, while I get back on my feet." "Of course, dear. And how is Liam?" "We see his car in and out at all hours. With different companions." She leaned in. "There was a young blonde last night. Couldn't have been more than 25. It must be so hard for you to see." I kept my smile nailed firmly to my face. "Liam's life is no longer my concern. Have a lovely day, Carol." But the worst was Liam himself. He seemed to take my continued presence in the neighborhood and specifically in Aiden's house as a personal insult. One Saturday morning, while I was pulling weeds in the small front planter box Aiden had told me I could use, Liam's Tesla pulled smoothly to the curb. He had a leggy brunette in the passenger seat. He didn't get out, he just rolled down the window. "Well, look at that. Playing gardener now, Michelle?" His voice carried easily across the quiet street. "I see you've fully embraced the rustic, working-class aesthetic." The woman next to him giggled. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my knees, saying nothing. "This is Chloe," Liam continued, unbothered by my silence. "Commercial real estate. Just closed a $12 million deal down on Broad Street." He placed a possessive hand high on her thigh. "And she has other, more fundamental talents as well. Unlike some people, she doesn't have functional issues." Chloe had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. My face burned, but I held his gaze. "Congratulations to you both. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do that don't involve my ex-husband stalking me." I turned and walked into the house, my hands shaking. Aiden was in the kitchen, methodically sharpening a set of chef's knives on a whetstone. The rhythmic shh filled the room, He had seen the entire exchange through the window. He's trying to provoke a reaction, Aiden said calmly, not looking up from the blade. He's a predator. He's looking for weak points. Your reaction is what feeds him. I didn't react, I said, my voice tight. You're shaking. He finally looked up. That's a reaction. He saw it. It's going to embolden him. So what am I supposed to do? Just ignore it while he parades his fertile realtors in front of me? For now, yes. He set the knife down. Timing is everything, Michelle. Let him dig his own grave. The deeper he digs, the harder it will be for him to climb out. I didn't entirely understand what he meant, but the absolute certainty in his tone was an anchor. I nodded, taking a deep breath. The UW Law Clinic took my case. They're sending a cease and desist regarding the harassment, and they're challenging the seizure of my personal checking account. They say the prenup clause is completely enforceable. Good. That single word contained more satisfaction than a full sentence from anyone else. Let the professionals handle the law. You focus on building your new life. Building my new life meant studying. I passed the Washington State Real Estate Licensing exam. Aiden framed the certificate and hung it in the kitchen, right next to a faded photograph of him and a smiling, kind-faced woman on a hiking trail. Sarah. It's a start, he said. Now I need to actually hustle for clients, I replied, feeling a spike of anxiety. I can't hide in here and study forever. You aren't hiding. You're regrouping. He paused, as if weighing his next words. And wait until after the surprise. Surprise? Aiden, I don't need surprises. I need a paycheck. This will help with that. Trust me. Trust was the absolute foundation of our strange arrangement. I trusted him completely. But the mystery surrounding him nagged at me. He traveled at least 1 week out of every month, always saying he was meeting with clients on the East Coast. He would return looking exhausted, but intensely focused, sometimes bringing me a small, elegant gift. A first edition copy of a book I loved. A silk scarf from a museum in D.C. The gifts felt expensive, wildly out of place with the austere, simple life he led at home. One day, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived for him in the mail. I left it on the entryway table. The return address was discreetly embossed, McCoy Strategic Solutions, 1200 Fifth Avenue, Suite 2200, Seattle, WA. My breath hitched. 1200. Fifth Avenue was the IBM building downtown, some of the most expensive commercial real estate in the city. When Aiden got home that evening, I was waiting with the envelope in my hand. You got mail. He took it. His expression was completely unreadable. Thanks. McCoy Strategic Solutions, I said, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. That's your consulting gig? Yeah. He started walking toward his home office, the one room in the house that was always locked. Aiden. He stopped. What kind of consulting firm has an office in the IBM building? He turned around. His gaze was steady. The boring, lucrative kind. Government contracts. Threat assessments. Systems analysis. Dry stuff. It doesn't sound dry. It sounds massive. That office space is a conference room I rent by the hour for client meetings. It's for show. The real work is done elsewhere. He offered a slight smile. Don't be too impressed. It's mostly spreadsheets and security clearances. It was a plausible explanation, but it felt like another piece of a puzzle where I was missing the box art. The harassment escalated. A manila envelope appeared in Aiden's mailbox. No stamp. Inside were photographs. Me jogging. Me loading groceries into my Civic, which was running beautifully, now. Me laughing with Aiden on the porch as he taught me how to prune a rose bush. The last photo was taken with a telephoto lens intimate, capturing the unguarded ease on my face. Something I hadn't felt in years. There was a note paper-clipped to it. Trash belongs with trash. Liam's handwriting. I felt physically sick. Aiden examined the photos. His face was a mask of cold neutrality, professional rig. Long-range lens. Steady hands. He hired a PI. What do we do? Call the cops? The police will call it a domestic dispute and do nothing. He isn't making direct threats. He's just making a nuisance of himself. Aiden's eyes were like flint. I'll handle it. How? Aiden, you can't just handle a private investigator. I'm not going to handle the investigator. He took the photos and the note. I'm going to handle the man who hired him. Wait here. He went into his office. I heard the deadbolt click shut. 20 minutes later, he emerged wearing a dark jacket. Where are you going? To have a conversation. I'll be back for dinner. He paused at the door. Don't wait up if I'm late. He was gone for 3 hours. I paced the living room. Ranger whined, picking up on my anxiety. When Aiden returned, he looked exactly the same as when he left. Calm. Unruffled. He hung up his jacket and went to the kitchen sink to wash his hands. Well? I demanded, following him. It's handled. What does that mean, Aiden? Did you see Liam? Did you hurt him? He shot me an almost amused look. No, Michelle. I don't need to hurt people to make them stop. I tracked down the PI, guy named Rollins. Operates out of a strip mall in Bellevue. I showed him the photos and asked who hired him. He was reluctant. Right up until I mentioned that I was going to forward evidence of his unlicensed surveillance activities, along with some very interesting financial irregularities, from his time on the police force to his former captain and the state licensing board. My eyes went wide. How did you know about that? I told you. I hear things. He dried his hands meticulously. He gave up Liam's name pretty fast. After that, I went to visit Liam at his office. You went to Tech Banty? I did. Walked right past his new blonde assistant. He was in a meeting with his CFO. I waited. Aiden's voice was deathly quiet now. When he came out, I handed him the photos. I told him that if one more photo showed up, just one, I would publicly release the full forensic accounting report regarding his embezzlement at Tech Banty to the SEC, his board of directors, and the Seattle Times. I told him he knew exactly what I was talking about. My jaw dropped. Embezzlement? Aiden, what are you talking about? Liam has been siphoning money from his own Series B funding for 2 years. Funneling it into a shell corporation in the Caymans. He thinks he's being clever. He isn't. A first-year forensic accountant could find it. How could you possibly know that? He just looked at me for a long time. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking clock. I saw the calculus in his eyes, weighing exactly how much to reveal. Who are you, really, Aiden? I asked in a whisper. You aren't just a consultant. You don't just rent an office. You know about illegal surveillance and police misconduct, and you have a full forensic audit of a tech CEO ready to go. Who are you? He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. My company, McCoy Strategic Solutions, we do classified work for government agencies. Defense. Homeland Security. Sometimes the alphabet soups. We stress test physical and digital security systems. We run background checks so deep they'd make a psychiatrist blush. We assess threats. He paused, letting the weight of it sink in. When I moved here after Sarah died, I wanted quiet. Anonymity. The house, the truck, the clothes. It's part of the profile. Low profile, harmless veteran. It's useful. So, you're a spy? The word sounded ridiculous out loud. He almost laughed. No, I'm a businessman who provides a highly specific, highly discreet service. My clients are governments and Fortune 100s who need to know things. And yes, I hear things. About Liam. About a lot of people. I knew about his embezzlement 6 months ago. I knew he was a narcissist and a bully. I knew he would try to destroy you on his way out. His gaze softened. What I didn't know was how much I would care about stopping him. The kitchen seemed to spin. The quiet neighbor, the guy who fixed fences and ate my pot roast, was a high-level security contractor with access to the darkest secrets of Seattle's elite. It was insane. It was terrifying, and yet, it explained absolutely everything. The unshakable calm. The resources. The absolute lack of fear. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have let me help you if you knew? He asked quietly. Would you have accepted a loan from a CEO? Would you have moved into his house? He shook his head. You needed a friend, Michelle. Not another source of intimidation or complication. I was trying to be exactly what you needed. I sank into one of the bar stools. My head was spinning. So, this whole thing. The groceries, the car, the room. It wasn't just kindness. It was a project. His expression hardened. It was the first flash of genuine anger I had ever seen from him. No. The word cracked like a whip. Do not cheapen this. How I feel about you has nothing to do with my job. The man who washes the dishes with you, the man who worries about you, that is who I really am. The CEO, the guy with the security clearances. That's just a suit I wear to work. The heart underneath it is the same. And it's yours, if you want it. The air vanished from the room. We had been so careful, so polite, so compartmentalized. This was a direct hidden absolute, staggering exposure of vulnerability. Aiden. I'm not asking for an answer right now, he said, his voice turning raspy. I'm just telling you the truth. The whole truth. You deserve that. The photos stopped. Liam's Tesla stopped doing slow drive-bys. A brittle, tense calm settled over the neighborhood. And between Aiden and me, something shifted. The careful boundaries were still there, but they felt permeable. We talked more. He told me about Sarah, about the gut-wrenching loss, about the years of numbness that followed. I told him about my dreams, the ones that had absolutely nothing to do with Liam. About wanting to start a boutique design firm, about wanting to help other women rebuild their lives. One night, he was under the kitchen sink, fixing a stubborn leak. I was sitting on the floor, handing him tools. Ranger was snoring at our feet. Hand me the adjustable wrench, he said. His voice muffled by the cabinet. I handed it to him. Our fingers brushed. It was a simple, mundane contact, but a jolt of electricity shot up my arm. I realized, with sudden, profound clarity, that I felt more at home in this exact moment, sitting on a linoleum floor with a man covered in pipe grease, than I ever had in the marble perfection of Liam's mansion. Aiden tightened a fitting, let out a satisfied grunt, and slid out from under the sink. He sat up, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked at me. There was a smudge of grease on his cheek. Fixed. Without thinking, I reached out and wiped the grease away with my thumb. The contact was electric. We both froze. He caught my wrist with a gentle, immovable grip. His eyes searched mine, dark and intense. Michelle. I am not fragile. Aiden, I whispered. He stood up, pulling me gently to my feet with him. We were inches apart. I could feel the heat radiating off him. I could see the pulse beating at the base of his throat. This could be permanent, he said, his voice a low, rough rumble. You and me. Not as roommates, not as a strategic alliance. As a partnership. What are you saying? It wasn't a flowery proposal. It was a statement of fact. An offer of a shared future, built on the honest, unglamorous rubble of our pasts. It was the most real thing anyone had ever said to me. I didn't hesitate. I didn't need to. I saw our future in his steady gaze. Not a fairy tale, but a shared life of fixed leaks, quiet dinners, and fierce, unyielding loyalty. Yes, I said. The word was simple, final, and absolutely certain. He didn't kiss me right then. He just rested his forehead against mine and let out a long, shaky exhale, as if he had been holding his breath for years. "Okay," he murmured. "Okay." We got married 2 weeks later, at the King County Courthouse downtown. The only witnesses were the young law student from the UW clinic who was handling my case, and Jack the mechanic. I wore a simple cream-colored dress. Aiden wore his only good suit. Ranger wore a bandana. We were walking down the courthouse steps, hand in hand, when my phone buzzed. A text from Liam's number. "City Hall? Really hit rock bottom, haven't you, Michelle? Guess congratulations are in order. Don't come crawling back when his VA benefits run out." I showed the screen to Aiden. He took my phone, typed a single reply, and hit send before handing it back. The message read, "Watch your mail, Anderson." Then, he took my hand again, his grip warm and secure. "Let's go home, Mrs. McCoy." The new name sounded strange to my ears, but in my heart, it felt like finally coming in from the cold. 6 weeks later, the silence in the house had a completely different texture. It wasn't just the absence of noise, it was a comfortable, shared space between heartbeats. I was Mrs. McCoy. The name still felt new on my tongue, like a tailored suit I was breaking in, but internally, it fit perfectly. It meant waking up to the smell of coffee Aiden had brewed just before his alarm went off, and falling asleep to the solid, reassuring weight of his arm across my waist. It meant sharing toothpaste and laughing quietly over the Sunday crossword. It was real, and it was wonderfully ordinary in every way that mattered. Except for the ways it wasn't. Aiden traveled. It was the only constant interruption to our fragile new domesticity. Every 3 weeks or so, he would pack a single, battered leather duffel bag. D.C. Again? I asked, trying to keep my tone light as I handed him a travel mug of coffee. "Client meetings in Virginia and the district," he said, kissing my forehead. "Shouldn't be more than 4 days. I'll call when I land." He always did. Brief, functional calls. Landed. At the hotel. Meeting ran long. Talk tomorrow. And he would return looking exhausted, the lines around his eyes carved a little deeper, but with a quiet, humming energy beneath the surface. And he always brought a gift. Not flowers or chocolates, but fiercely thoughtful things. A first edition copy of To Kill a Mockingbird from a legendary D.C. bookstore, because I had once mentioned it was my favorite. An impossibly soft cashmere scarf from a boutique in Georgetown. A set of hand-forged Japanese kitchen knives that made our old ones look like plastic toys. "Aiden, this is too much," I protested the first time, holding the beautiful, dangerously sharp chef's knife. "They're just tools," he said with a shrug. "Good tools for a good cook." He said it with the casual simplicity of someone buying a gallon of milk. The extravagance of the gifts clashed violently with the man who still drove a 10-year-old truck and wore the same 3 pairs of Levi's. It was another piece of the puzzle I couldn't quite fit together. Meanwhile, Liam's campaign of petty cruelty shifted forms. The private investigator was gone, but Liam himself was a constant, toxic presence in the neighborhood. He seemed to take our marriage as a direct challenge to his ego. Since he could no longer harass me legally without violating the restraining order the UW clinic had secured, he settled for aggressively flaunting his new life. He would be out washing his Tesla when Aiden and I walked the dog, and there was always a different woman with him, all young, all blonde, all laughing just a little too loudly. He would rev the engine of his new Porsche 911 every time he drove past Aiden's house. The worst incident was the Queen Anne neighborhood 4th of July block party. It was the first neighborhood event I had attended since the divorce. To my surprise, Aiden agreed to go. "We can't let him think he's chased us out," he said simply. We were standing near the communal picnic tables, me holding a paper plate with a hot dog I had no appetite for, when Liam swaggered over. He had his latest accessory on his arm, a woman named Sasha, a Pilates instructor, according to Carol Gabble's frantic whispering 5 minutes prior. "Michelle." "Aiden," Liam said, his voice dripping with faux cordiality. "Glad to see you're integrating with the community." His eyes raked over Aiden's simple chinos and polo shirt, a silent judgment on their retail value. Liam, I said flatly. This is Sasha, he announced, squeezing her waist. We're expecting a baby in December. Finally found a woman whose body actually knows what it's supposed to do. He let out a sharp, ugly laugh. Sasha had the decency to look down at her wedges. Aiden's hand, resting lightly on the small of my back, didn't move. He didn't even tense. He took a slow sip of his lemonade. Congratulations, he said in a tone so completely neutral he could have been reading a weather report. Children are a blessing. I hope you prove worthy of yours. Liam's mocking smile faltered for a fraction of a second. The response threw him, but he recovered quickly. Oh, I'll be worthy. I'll be giving my kid the best of everything. Not all of us have to scrape by, you know. He cast a pointed look at our modest spread. Timing is everything, Liam. Aiden said, dropping his voice to a conversational murmur that somehow sounded vastly more threatening than a shout. Let him dig his own grave. Remember Michelle? He wasn't talking to Liam anymore. He was reminding me. He turned his back on Liam and gently guided me away. The potato salad looks better over here. I was trembling, a cocktail of rage and profound humiliation. I hate him. I hate that he gets to be happy, that he gets to have a baby after everything. He isn't happy, Aiden said, handing me a napkin. And the baby is an accessory. You'll see. In 6 months, he'll be with someone else, and Sasha will just be another line item on his alimony spreadsheet. A grave, Michelle. He's digging it. I wanted to believe him. But seeing Sasha's barely there bump, seeing the possessive way Liam touched her. It felt like a knife twisting in a wound that had never fully closed. Aiden left for another trip the following Tuesday. The silence of the house was heavier without him. I had passed my state real estate exams and my license, framed by Aiden, hung in our small home office. His desk was immaculately clean, just a high-end laptop and a secure, encrypted phone. My desk was buried in study materials for my project management certification and local MLS listings. I was trying. I was building. But a seed of anxiety had taken root. Liam's words kept echoing in my head. Scraping by. That was what I was doing. Living in Aiden's house. Studying for jobs I might not even get, while he flew off to meetings I knew nothing about. When he returned on Friday, I was waiting in the entryway. He went to kiss me, but I stepped back. We need to talk. He slowly set his duffel bag on the hardwood floor, searching my face. Okay. What's wrong? Where do you go, Aiden? Really? The client meetings line is evasive. You come back looking like you haven't slept, and you bring me gifts that cost more than my first car. Who are these clients? What do you actually do? He didn't look away. He just nodded, as if he had been expecting this. Let's sit down. We moved to the living room couch. Ranger rested his heavy head on my lap, sensing the tension. Aiden leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. The meetings are real. The clients are real. They are government agencies and Fortune 100 companies. The work is sensitive. I sign NDAs thicker than your arm. And I'm just supposed to accept that? That my husband vanishes for days and could be doing anything? I assess vulnerabilities, he interrupted, his voice calm but firm. Physical security. Cybersecurity. Personnel. A bank hires us to see if we can hack them. A government agency hires us to see if we can walk a dummy explosive into a secure facility. It's problem solving. It's what I'm good at. He reached out and took my hand. The secrecy has nothing to do with you. But you're right. You deserve more than that. He took a deep breath. McCoy Strategic Solutions is not a one-man consulting firm, it's my company. I founded it 8 years ago after I got out of the service. I am the majority owner, the CEO, and the lead operative. I stared at him. Your company. The one with the office in the Columbia Center. It's a real office. Not just a conference room, We have 37 employees, mostly ex-special forces or intelligence. The low-profile life here. It's a choice. It keeps my family, it keeps you off the radar of people who might want to use you to get to me or my clients. He squeezed my hand. I am not poor, Michelle. Not by a long shot. I've been waiting for the right time to tell you. To show you everything. I wanted you to be with me for me. Not for what I have. The pieces clicked together with an almost audible snap. The home security system that was light years beyond anything else in the neighborhood. The unshakable calm. The resources. It wasn't just a comfortable life, it was a fortress he had built himself. How much? I asked. How much is not by a long shot. The question felt crass, but I had to know. He gave me a number. A number so large it was abstract. Almost meaningless. It wasn't just wealth, it was generational wealth. F.U. money. The kind of money that could buy and sell Liam's entire tech startup without a second thought. I felt dizzy. And you live here? In this house? You drive that truck? I like this house. I like the truck. Money is a tool, Michelle. It allows me to do the work I want, protect the people I care about, and live a life that isn't about showing off. Until now, the only person I had to protect was myself. Now, I have you. His gaze was intense. I was going to tell you. I was planning a surprise way to show you, to give you the security you always should have had. But your peace of mind is more important than a grand gesture. The company is mine. The money is ours. You will never have to worry about Liam, or anything else, ever again. The enormity of it crashed over me like a wave. The man I had married, the quiet, capable neighbor, was a powerhouse. A ghost in the machine of the global elite. And he had chosen me. I need to work, Aiden, I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a profound vulnerability. I can't just be a kept wife. I need to be myself. He reached up and cupped my face, stroking my cheek with his thumb. You aren't kept. You are my partner. And you are rebuilding yourself. The licenses, the studying. That is you. Pouring your own foundation. I am going to support that 100%. But let me provide the safety net you deserve while you do it. Let me give you the surprise. It's almost ready. What surprise? A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, the one that transformed him from the serious operative into the man I had fallen in love with. You'll see, just a little longer. Trust me. And against all logic, after all the lies of my past, I trusted him completely. 2 weeks later, the world tilted on its axis again. I was late. Not a little late. I was never late. A cold, familiar dread gripped my stomach, followed immediately by a wild, terrifying hope I refused to name. I bought a test, then 3. At 3 different pharmacies, acting like a fugitive. I took them all in the pristine white bathroom of the house that was inexplicably my home now. I set a timer on my phone and paced the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. The alarm chimed. 2 pink lines. On all 3 tests. I sank to the floor, my back against the cool porcelain of the bathtub, the plastic sticks slipping from my numb fingers. Pregnant. After years of failure, of invasive procedures. Of soul-crushing disappointment. It had just happened. Naturally. In the quiet safety of a marriage built on friendship and fierce loyalty. Terror and joy warred violently inside me. I was older now. What if something went wrong? What if my body failed me again? The front door opened. Michelle? You home? Aiden's voice echoed down the hall. I scrambled to my feet, shoving the tests into the vanity drawer. I wasn't ready. I needed to process this. I needed a plan. I needed to see a doctor. I walked out of the bathroom, my face pale. He took one look at me and crossed the living room in 2 strides. What's wrong? Are you sick? I need to sit down. He guided me to the couch, his face tight with concern. "Talk to me." I took a shuddering breath. "I'm late, really late. I took a test. I took 3 tests." His entire body went statue still. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears blurring my vision. For a second, he didn't move. Then a visible tremor wrecked his frame. The unflappable Aiden McCoy looked utterly devastated by hope. "Are you sure?" "3 tests, Aiden. They don't mess up that often." A sound escaped him, half sob, half laugh. He pulled me into his arms, crushing me to his chest so tightly I could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered into my hair, his voice thick. "Our baby." We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in a dazed, euphoric bubble of disbelief. Then, the practical operative inside him booted up. He pulled back, framing my face in his hands. "We are seeing a doctor tomorrow morning. The best. I'll make the calls. Aiden, it's Friday night. We can call my OB/GYN on Monday." "No," he said, and there was a steel in his voice I had only heard once before, when he talked about Liam's pie. "We are not taking any chances. Not with this." He stood up and pulled out his phone, not his personal one, the sleek encrypted device. He dialed a number. "Evelyn. It's Aiden McCoy. I need you." "Yes, tonight." "No. It's not a bup, it's my wife. She's pregnant." He listened for a moment, his eyes locked on mine, shining with unshed tears. "I know. Thank you. I want to activate the Sterling protocol." "Yes. Full suite. Obstetrics and neonatology. I'll text you the details. Money is no object. Just keep her safe. Keep them both safe." He hung up. Dr. Evelyn Sterling, top maternal-fetal medicine specialist on the West Coast. She's on permanent retainer for select clients. She'll be here in under an hour with a mobile ultrasound. By Monday, you will have a full team OB, nutritionist, doula, therapist, whatever you need. It's a concierge medical team. It's what they use for high-profile clients who require absolute discretion and the highest level of care. I was still reeling. An ultrasound? Here? Tonight, he said, leaving no room for debate. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands. "For 3 years, you fought for this alone. You were dismissed, minimized, and thrown away. That is over. You are the most important person in the world to me, and you are carrying our child. You are going to have an army of the best professionals on the planet, ensuring you are both healthy and happy. That isn't a luxury, Michelle. It is my absolute, non-negotiable right as your husband." Dr. Sterling arrived an hour later. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a calming bedside manner. She set up a portable ultrasound machine right in our living room. The gel was warm. Aiden gripped my hand with almost painful intensity. The grainy black and white image flickered to life on the screen. Dr. Sterling moved the wand. Her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, she smiled. "Well, hello there," she murmured. She angled the screen slightly. "See that flicker? That's a strong, perfect heartbeat. Beside me." Aiden let out a choked breath. "And right over here," Dr. Sterling said, moving the wand just a fraction of an inch. "Is the other one." Dead silence. "The other one?" I managed to whisper. "You're having twins, Michelle, Dr. Sterling said, her smile widening. 2 perfect heartbeats." I looked at Aiden. Tears were tracking freely down his face. He wasn't even trying to hide them. He looked at me, then back to the monitor, where 2 tiny, pulsing stars of life burned bright through the static. The man who stared down corporate spies and government agents was completely undone by 2 pixels on a screen. "Twins," he breathed, his voice thick with awe. Then he laughed. A pure, unadulterated sound of absolute joy I had never heard from him before. He leaned down and kissed me, deeply and passionately, right in front of the doctor and the entire universe. Later, after Dr. Sterling left with a stack of instructions and the promise of the full team arriving Monday, we lay in bed, tangled together. My hand rested on my still flat stomach. A secret garden of miracles. Aiden, I whispered into the dark. McCoy strategic. How did you go from the military to that? He was quiet for a moment, stroking my hair. After Sarah died, I had a lot of anger, a very specific skill set, and decent severance pay. A buddy from the teams had gotten into executive protection. He introduced me to a guy at the Department of Energy who needed a stress test on a new nuclear facility's security grid. We found 17 critical vulnerabilities. Word got around. I hired a few smart, discreet guys I trusted. We never advertised. The work just found us. I built it into what it is because I had nothing else to focus on. Until you. He kissed the top of my head. You asked me once what I saw in you. I saw a woman whose life had detonated, and who was still standing. I saw a woman who brought lemon bars to the lonely neighbor. A woman with a spine of steel, who didn't even know she had one. You managed a household, a social calendar, you got certifications just to prove you could. You are the most capable person I know, Michelle. You just needed someone to give you a solid foundation to build on. Liam looked at you like an appliance. I look at you as the architect. His words settled over me, warm and heavy as a weighted blanket. The final piece of the puzzle. The why of this incredible man finally made sense. He wasn't rescuing me. He was recognizing me. And in doing so, he had given me back to myself. As I drifted off to sleep, tucked safely inside the fortress of his arms, a crystal-clear thought pierced through the joy and the lingering fear. Liam Anderson, with his tech money, and his sports cars and his pregnant Pilates instructor, had absolutely no idea what was coming for him. He had thrown away a diamond, and in his sheer arrogance, he had tossed it directly into the hands of a man who knew its true value and who possessed the power of a dormant volcano, just waiting to erupt beneath Liam's feet. Over the next 3 months, the Sterling Protocol wasn't just medical care, it was an occupation. A benevolent, luxurious, completely comprehensive takeover of my life. Within 72 hours of that first ultrasound, our quiet craftsman home underwent a subtle but profound transformation. A crew of discreet technicians installed a whole-house water filtration system and a state-of-the-art HEPA air purification unit that hummed in near silence. The guest room morphed into a sunlit nursery expansion, complete with an organic cotton glider and a prototype smart crib that monitored infant vitals. A commercial-grade secondary fridge appeared in the kitchen, stocked weekly by a delivery service from an exclusive organic farm in the San Juan Islands, every item meticulously tracked and coded. Dr. Evelyn Sterling became my constant, serene shadow. She accompanied me to my first official prenatal appointment at Swedish Medical Center's elite maternal fetal wing, smoothly taking command of the department head with terrifying polite authority. Standard procedures are for standard pregnancies, Dr. Sterling informed the wide-eyed resident. Mrs. McCoy's pregnancy is priority 1. You will follow my charting. And they did. I had ultrasounds weekly, not monthly. Blood work was processed in-house within hours. A warm but commanding nutritionist named Anna designed meal plans that somehow made kale and bone broth taste like fine dining. A prenatal yoga instructor, a tranquil woman named Leela, visited the house 3 days a week. Every twinge, craving, and emotional shift I experienced was logged, analyzed, and addressed with military precision. It was overwhelming, smothering, and I had to admit profoundly relieving. For the first time in my life, my body wasn't being treated as a problem to solve, but as a treasure to protect. Aiden transformed as well. The cool, detached operator vanished, replaced by a man of endearing, slightly frantic devotion. He attended every single appointment, his massive hand swallowing mine, asking highly technical questions that impressed even Dr. Sterling. What is the median corpus luteum volume in a dichorionic, diamniotic twin pregnancy at 18 weeks? And are Michelle's levels tracking within standard deviation? He asked one afternoon. making it abundantly clear he had spent the previous night reading peer-reviewed medical journals. "Mr. McCoy, I am the physician, doctor," Sterling replied dryly, though the corner of her mouth twitched. "Her levels are exemplary. The babies are perfect." The babies. Grace and Samuel, as we had decided to name them. Seeing their active, growing bodies on the high-definition monitors was a joy that completely eclipsed the brutal morning sickness that plagued me. Aiden had a solution for that, too. He had a lighting engineer install specialized full-spectrum bulbs in the bathrooms and kitchen to reduce nausea triggers. He tracked down an acupuncturist specializing in prenatal care who made house calls. Nothing was too extravagant, too expensive, or too much trouble. He also started talking to my stomach. Deep, serious conversations about geopolitics, the structural integrity of suspension bridges, and the migratory patterns of Canadian geese. "They need to be informed," he told me with a completely straight face when I laughed at him. It was during one of these domestic scenes, Aiden reading the Wall Street Journal aloud to my bump while I sipped ginger tea, that the first shot in Liam's new war was fired. A thick, formal envelope arrived from the Queen and Homeowners Association. Addressed to current occupant. "What's this?" I asked, handing it to Aiden. He sliced it open with a letter opener and scanned the contents. A muscle in his jaw feathered. Notice of violation. Citing excessive and non-compliant exterior modifications detrimental to community, aesthetic, and property values. What modifications? The new security cameras, which are painted the exact same color as the trim, Aiden said flatly. It also lists the commercial HVAC unit, the unauthorized structural reinforcement of the back deck, and a proliferation of professional service vehicles creating a disruptive parking pattern. He looked up. A cold light returning to his eyes. The service vehicles are Dr. Sterling and the nutritionist. Liam is on the HOA board. He's weaponizing it. He can't do that. This is our house, he's trying. Aiden's voice was quiet, but it was the stillness of the ocean right before a hurricane. It's an attrition tactic. Fines. Hearings. Legal fees. He wants to bleed us. Make our lives difficult. Over the next week, the harassment escalated. A city inspector showed up, claiming an anonymous tip about unpermitted electrical work. The work was fully permitted. Aiden had the paperwork in the inspector's hands before the man finished his sentence. A noise complaint was filed regarding a nocturnal mechanical disturbance, the Whisper Quiet air purifier. Carol Gabble dropped by, looking sheepish, to mention that the neighborhood consensus was that all the foot traffic was disrupting the character of the block. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning. Liam himself was standing in his front yard, directing a landscaping crew to plant a row of absurdly tall, fast-growing arborvitae trees directly along the property line, clearly intended to block our view and sunlight. He saw us watching from the living room window and offered a smug, mocking little wave. Aiden stared at him for a long, silent minute. Then he picked up his encrypted phone and walked into his office. He emerged 20 minutes later. "It's handled," he said, kissing my temple. "Handled how?" "You'll see." The following Monday, an official letter of a very different sort arrived. It was from a top-tier corporate law firm, Bryan & Coulson, representing an entity called M. Birch LLC. The letter informed the Queen Anne Community HOA that M. Birch LLC had, as of 5:00 p.m., the previous Friday, acquired the deeds to the 12 properties that comprised our specific subsection of the street. This included the house Liam was currently renting, which he did not own, it turned out, our house, and the 6 surrounding homes. As the sole voting member of this newly consolidated block of properties, M. Birch LLC was officially notifying the HOA of its withdrawal from the association and the immediate dissolution of all neighborhood covenants and restrictions regarding these addresses. Furthermore, all fines levied against our specific address were rendered null and void, and any future grievances were to be directed to the legal team at Bryan & Coulson. I read the letter twice. My jaw practically hit the floor. "You bought the entire street through a shell company?" "I did," Aiden replied casually, pouring kibble into Ranger's bowl. It was more efficient than fighting them in committee. They have no jurisdiction now. The HOA is effectively neutered on this block. Liam's little kingdom just got vastly downsized. But the cost? A strategic, highly satisfying investment, he said, allowing himself a tight, grim smile. The look on his face when he opens his mail will be worth every penny. It was. From the living room window, we watched the mail carrier drop the envelopes. Hours later, Liam stormed out of his house, the crumpled letter clutched in his fist, his face a storm of rage and disbelief. He glared at our house, completely impotent, before getting into his Tesla and speeding off. The victory was sweet, but short-lived. The twins grew. My belly rounded out, and with it, a new, profound sense of vulnerability blossomed. I was a living, breathing symbol of everything Liam had insisted I could never be: fertile, loved, protected. He couldn't touch Aiden financially or legally, so he lashed out the only way he had left: through public, vulgar humiliation. One evening, as Aiden was helping me out of the truck after a particularly grueling OB appointment, Liam's Porsche pulled up right behind us. He wasn't alone. Sasha, the Pilates instructor, was in the passenger seat. Her own bump was prominent now, proudly displayed in tight athleisure wear. She looked incredibly uncomfortable, her eyes darting away. Liam got out, not even bothering to invent an excuse for being there. He leaned against the hood of his sports car, the picture of manufactured cruelty. Well, look at you, Michelle, blooming. Or should I say, ballooning? His eyes dragged over my rounded figure with undisguised contempt. Twins, I hear. Trying to make up for lost time with volume, since quality was never your strong suit. Aiden's hand, gripping my elbow, went rigid. But he remained perfectly still, a monument of restrained violence. Liam's gaze flicked to him. And the mysterious Mr. McCoy. Still playing the humble handyman, I see. Must be exhausting, keeping up the charade for her. He laughed. Tell me, what's the game plan? VA benefits and her settlement money are going to run dry eventually. You going to raise those kids in that quaint little box? He draped a possessive arm over Sasha's shoulders. She flinched slightly. At least my kid will know his father is a winner. A provider. Not some neighborhood charity case. And that was the final drop in the bucket. I physically felt the tension in Aiden's snap. He took one step forward. Just one, but the entire atmosphere around us altered completely. The quiet, unassuming neighbor vanished into thin air. In his place stood someone terrifyingly different, a man of absolute, crushing authority. His posture straightened, his shoulders rolled back, and his eyes, usually so warm when they looked at me, turned to glacial ice. The air literally felt colder. Liam, Aiden said. His voice was different, too. Deeper, lower, but with the surgical precision of a scalpel. It wasn't a shout. It was a statement of fact that demanded absolute silence. You've had your fun. You've postured, you've bragged, you've paraded your interchangeable, unfortunate girlfriends around. You've harassed my wife. You've tried to weaponize petty bureaucracy. You are a gnat buzzing around a lion, and your time is officially up. Liam let out a scoffing laugh, trying desperately to cling to his arrogance. Oh yeah? And what are you going to do, handyman? Fix my attitude with a socket wrench? Aiden didn't smile. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a slim, black leather folder. He didn't open it. He just held it. I am not a handyman, Liam. I am the CEO and majority shareholder of McCoy Strategic Solutions. You may have heard of us. We are the people the Pentagon calls when they can't afford for a situation to go sideways. We are the people companies like yours hire to plug the holes in their ship before it sinks. He took another step forward. Liam subconsciously took a step back, bumping into the side of his Porsche. While you were busy stealing from your own company, Aiden continued, his tone lethally calm, I was building an empire. While you were mocking my wife, I was learning absolutely everything there is to know about you. Every dirty secret. Every cut corner. Every lie. You're full of shit, Liam spat, but the color was draining rapidly from his face. Am I? Aiden finally flipped the folder open. He didn't hand it over, he just angled the first page so Liam could see it. From where I stood, I could see columns of numbers, routing codes, and a stark, bold header. SEC Preliminary Findings, Tech Banty Capital Misappropriation. You've embezzled $2.8 million from your own Series B round over the last 22 months, Aiden recited, as casually as reading a grocery list. You funneled it through a shell company in the Caymans called Horizon Ventures. You used it to fund your lifestyle, the cars, the watches, the hush money for the women. He looked at Sasha, who looked like she wanted the asphalt to swallow her whole. The Securities and Exchange Commission has been building a case since last month. They were waiting on one final piece of connecting evidence. I had it hand-delivered to the U.S. Attorney's Office this morning. Liam's arrogance shattered like cheap glass. His face went from pale to a sickly, ashen gray. That's private financial data. You can't have that. That's corporate espionage. It's due diligence, Aiden corrected smoothly. He turned to the second page. And then there is the matter of your impending progeny. He looked directly at Sasha. His expression wasn't cruel, but it was utterly merciless. Miss Pellegrini. Perhaps you should have requested a paternity test. The one I ran quietly, courtesy of DNA, extracted from a discarded coffee cup belonging to Liam, cross-referenced with your prenatal lab work from First Hill Diagnostics, returned a 0% probability of paternity. The world stopped spinning. The father, based on a familial DNA match, is highly likely to be one Marcus Thorne. A bartender at the Canonicus Club. Aiden paused. A club membership Liam paid for using embezzled funds, incidentally. Sasha let out a choked, horrified gasp, clapping both hands over her mouth. Liam stared at Aiden, then turned slowly to look at Sasha. His eyes were wide, filled with horror and the catastrophic realization of his own ruin. No. You had no right. Liam stammered, his voice cracking. I had every right, Aiden said, his voice dropping to a death rattle. You threatened my wife. You tried to poison her peace. You are a thief, a liar, and a fraud. As of an hour ago, your personal assets are frozen. Your board of directors has been briefed, and the feds have a very thick file with your name on it. He snapped the folder shut. The sound was as final as a gavel. The gnat has been swatted. Now get the hell off my property. And if you ever look in my wife's direction again, I will not be nearly so restrained in my response. Aiden turned his back on him, a dismissal so absolute it was more devastating than a physical blow. He walked back to me, and his expression instantly morphed from glacial rage to profound, tender concern. Are you okay? He murmured, cupping my cheek. I'm sorry you had to see that. I was shaking, but not from fear. From the seismic shockwave of what I had just witnessed. I had just watched a man be systematically dismantled, not with fists, but with cold, hard facts. The quiet, powerful force I had married had finally stepped out of the shadows, and it was a breathtaking, terrifying thing to behold. I looked over Aiden's shoulder at Liam. He was slumped against his car, the HOA letter and the revelation of his fake paternity crushing whatever fight he had left. He looked hollowed out. Destroyed from the inside. The polished, powerful tech executive was gone, replaced by a man staring into an abyss of his own making. I'm fine, I whispered to Aiden, leaning into his touch. Let's go inside. As Aiden guided me up the front walk, I heard Liam's voice broken, desperate, and small. Michelle. Please. You can't do this. Talk to him. Make him stop. I didn't turn around. I kept walking, my hand anchored in my husband's, toward the warmth and safety of our home. He had built an impenetrable fortress. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind us, locking the collapsing ruins of Liam Anderson outside. Inside, Aiden helped me to the couch, kneeling in front of me. I wanted to wait, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Until after the babies were born. I didn't want you dealing with this stress. But nobody insults my wife. Nobody threatens my family. I looked down at this complex, powerful, fiercely loyal man who had hidden a volcano of capability beneath a facade of quiet simplicity. He had done it all for me. To protect me. To avenge me. I placed my hands on his cheeks, feeling the tight cord of tension in his jaw. "I love you," I said. The words felt incredibly simple, totally insufficient for the storm of feeling inside me. "And I am not afraid of you." He rested his forehead against mine, squeezing his eyes shut. "Good," he breathed. "Because his fight is over. Ours is just beginning." He placed a gentle hand over my rounded belly, where Grace and Samuel were sleeping, blissfully unaware of the earthquake their father had just unleashed. And this is the only fight that matters. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The night after Aiden demolished Liam on the sidewalk, our doorbell rang at 2:17 a.m. The security panel monitor showed a distorted, desperate face pressed against the camera lens. Liam. He looked disheveled, swaying slightly on his feet, his knuckles white from pounding on the heavy wood. "Michelle! Please! Aiden, you have to talk to me." Aiden was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed watching the monitor. He didn't move. "He's drunk," I whispered, my heart hammering in my chest. "He's panicking," Aiden corrected coldly. "The wolves are at his door." He tapped a sequence into his encrypted phone. On the monitor, two large, silent men in dark clothing materialized from an SUV parked down the street. Aiden's men. I realized then that an invisible ring of security had been placed around our house. They flanked Liam, taking him firmly by the arms. "Get your hands off me. I need to talk to her. Michelle." The men's voices were a low murmur. "Mr. Anderson, you are trespassing. You need to leave. He's ruining me. You can't do this. I'll give it all back, just call off the feds." The external mic picked up his jagged, pathetic sob. The security men guided him, not unkindly but with absolute authority. Back toward his car. One of them confiscated his keys. "A rideshare is en route, sir. Your vehicle will remain here until morning. Do not return." Silence fell over the street again. Aiden pulled me against his chest. "It's over." But it wasn't over. Not for me. The revelation about Aiden was an emotional aftershock that continued to rattle my foundations. The next morning, over coffee at the kitchen island, I confronted him. "You lied to me." The words hung in the sunlit, quiet kitchen. He set his mug down, very slowly. "By omission." "Yes. For months. You let me believe you were a struggling consultant. You watched me clip coupons. Aiden, you watched me have a panic attack over an $800 car repair. Would you have let me help you if you knew the truth?" His gaze was direct, pained. "Would you have taken my hand, or would you have seen just another rich, powerful man trying to control your narrative? I needed you to see me. Not the CEO. Not the bank accounts. The man. The man who fixes leaks and loves your dog. That is who I really am." He stepped closer, his voice dropping a fraction. "The CEO is just a suit I wear. The heart underneath is the exact same, and it belongs to you. Everything else, the money, the company, they are just tools. Tools I use to protect you. To give you the life you always should have had." I wanted to stay angry. I was angry, but the memory of Liam's destroyed face, the sheer magnitude of what Aiden had engineered to keep me safe, warred with the sting of the deception. "You should have told me. You're right. I should have. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you would look at me the way you're looking at me right now. Like I'm a stranger. Like our life here is a fiction." He reached across the island, his hand hovering over mine. "It isn't a fiction, Michelle. This is the only real thing that has existed for me since Sarah died." The fight drained out of me. He was right. The wealth, the power, they were staggering, but they weren't his core. His core was the man who made coffee every morning, the man who read the Wall Street Journal to my belly, the man who had built a fortress of quiet strength around me. I slid my hand into his. "No more secrets. No more secrets," he promised, lacing his fingers through mine. The legal machinery Aiden had set in motion ground forward with terrifying efficiency. His personal attorney, Diana Ross, a razor-sharp former federal prosecutor, became a regular, if intimidating, presence in our living room. "Liam's personal assets are locked down tight," she reported one afternoon, her iPad glowing with data. "The SEC has formally charged him with wire fraud and embezzlement. Tech Bonte's board voted unanimously to oust him this morning. They are cooperating fully with the investigation to limit their own liability." "And the civil suit?" Aiden asked, his hand resting reassuringly on my shoulder. "Filed yesterday," Diana replied. "We are going after the full value of the marital assets denied to Michelle under the prenup clause, plus maximum punitive damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress and harassment. We've also filed for a permanent order of protection extending to 200 yards, she looked at me. "He will never be able to come near you, your children, or your property again." It was overwhelming. Total vindication, served on a silver platter by a legal avenger. The neighborhood, sensing the massive seismic shift in power, realigned itself immediately. Carol Gable showed up with a congratulatory card for the twins and an organic casserole. Others offered nervous, polite smiles. Nobody mentioned Liam. My pregnancy progressed, a beacon of joy cutting through the chaos. Then, at 34 weeks, the beacon flickered. A crushing headache. Black spots dancing in my vision. Sudden, alarming, swelling in my hands and feet. "Preeclampsia, doctor," Sterling said, her usually serene tone laced with urgency. "Your blood pressure is dangerously high. We are admitting you to Swedish right now." The next few hours were a terrifying blur of harsh hospital lights, IV lines, and the deep crease of worry between Aiden's eyes. My condition deteriorated rapidly. "We need to deliver," Dr. Sterling told us in the sterile quiet of the hospital room. "Tonight. For your safety and the baby's." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the haze of the magnesium drip. I looked at Aiden. He was pale, but his grip on my hand was ironclad. "Do whatever you have to do," Aiden told the doctor, his voice cracking slightly. "Just keep her safe." In the pre-op staging area, as they prepped me for an emergency C-section, a wave of pure panic washed over me. The memories of my past medical failures, the sterile smell of the hospital, the crushing feeling that my body was betraying me again, it all coalesced into a silent scream. Aiden, wearing blue surgical scrubs and a bouffant cap, leaned over the gurney, filling my entire field of vision. "Look at me, Michelle. Just look at me." "Aiden, what if something happens? What if nothing is going to happen?" His voice was absolute. A bedrock in the middle of a raging sea. "I already lost one love to fate. I am not losing another one. Do you hear me? You are the strongest person I have ever met. You are going to meet our children. I am right here." They wheeled me in. The world narrowed to bright surgical lamps, masked faces, and the crushing pressure of Aiden's hand holding mine. Then a thin, angry, beautiful wail. Then another. Slightly different pitch. Two distinct voices announcing their arrival into the world. Grace Evelyn McCoy, a nurse announced, bringing a Staya. Tiny, swaddled bundle to my cheek. Samuel James McCoy, said another. Tears blurred everything. I looked at Aiden. He was crying. Two silent tears soaking into the blue fabric of his surgical mask. He kissed my forehead, his lips trembling. "They're perfect," he whispered. "You were perfect." I spent 3 days in the ICU stabilizing, while Grace and Samuel thrived in the NICU. Tiny, fierce fighters. Aiden never left the hospital. He slept in a hard plastic chair, coordinated the army of specialists, and acted as an impenetrable wall between us and the outside world. On the 3rd day, sitting up in bed, I caught a glimpse of the muted television mounted in the corner. It was the local Seattle Economic Report. A photo of Liam flashed on the screen. He looked gaunt, hollowed out, defeated. The chyron read, TechBonti ex-CEO indicted, assets seized. Aiden followed my gaze. It's over for him, he said quietly. Professionally, financially, socially. I didn't feel triumph. Just a distant, hollow pity. I hope he gets the help he needs, I said softly, looking back down at the photo of our twins on my phone. But my chapter with him is permanently closed. Aiden took my hand and pressed it to his lips. Ours, he said, looking at the photo of our children, is just beginning. Liam's downfall was swift and absolute. The local news coverage was brutal. Seattle tech mogul accused of multi-million-dollar fraud. His face, once featured in glossy business magazines celebrating funding rounds, was now plastered on the front page, perp walking in handcuffs. Aiden's lawyer, Diana, laid out the terms in our living room, which was now cluttered with baby bouncers and burp cloths. The feds have him dead to rights on the financial crimes. He's looking at a minimum of 8 to 10 years, Diana explained. We can make the civil suit go away, reducing his legal burden slightly in exchange for a full, public confession and the return of triple the assets he hid from you during the divorce. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Michelle, it is a mercy he does not deserve. A confession? I asked, gently rocking a fussy Grace in my arms. A written and video-recorded statement admitting to the embezzlement, the harassment, and the intentional destruction of your financial security post-divorce. It goes on the court record and to the media. It will be a permanent, highly searchable stain. But it gives his defense team leverage to beg for a slightly lighter sentence. Aiden looked at me. It's your call. It's your justice. I thought about the fear. The coupons. The shattered terracotta pot. I looked down at the perfect, sleeping face of my daughter. Do it. Make him confess. Let the whole world know exactly who he is. The video was released publicly. Liam, pale and shrunken, inside a poorly fitting, cheap suit, read the damning statement in a flat, deadened monotone. He named me. He apologized for his cruel, retaliatory, and illegal actions. It was everywhere. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Michelle? The voice was thin and aged. It's Evelyn, Liam's mother. My breath hitched. Evelyn. We saw the video. We read everything in the papers. We didn't know about the money. Or how he treated you. We are so ashamed. She began to cry, a brittle, reedy sound. He was always so driven. So intense. We thought it was ambition. We were blind. I felt a sudden, unexpected pang of empathy. They had been distant, polite in-laws, utterly dazzled by their son's success. It isn't your fault, Evelyn. I feel like it is. We are so incredibly sorry for everything. We hope you are happy now, with your new family. I am, I said, and it was the truest thing I had ever spoken. I hope Liam gets the help he needs in there. But my chapter with him is closed. We hung up awkwardly. I set the phone down, feeling a massive, invisible weight lift off my chest. The very last tether to my old life was severed. My rebirth began in earnest. The twins were 3 months old, a joyful, chaotic whirlwind of needs. I was exhausted, but intensely alive. Aiden had hired a phenomenal night nurse, but I insisted on being the primary caregiver during the day. It was my choice, my domain. But I needed something more. I had the real estate license. I had the project management certification. They were tools gathering dust. One night, over a late dinner after finally getting the twins to sleep, I looked at Aiden across the table. I want to work. Not for your company. For me. I want to use my skills. He didn't hesitate. Tell me what you need. Funding? Office space? I don't need your money. I need a project. A purpose. He thought about it for a moment. You rebuilt this house into a home while you were pregnant and under siege. Right now, you're managing the most complex project of all. He nodded toward the baby monitor on the counter. What if you helped other people do the same? Women who are starting over. The idea caught fire instantly. I called it Haven Projects, a boutique firm dedicated to helping women in transition after a divorce, a loss, or fleeing abuse. We help them find and furnish affordable homes, navigate their new financial realities, and rebuild their lives. I used my own settlement money from Liam, the tripled returned assets, as the seed capital. It was poetic justice converted into equity. Aiden helped, but strictly from the shadows. He casually mentioned my new firm to an acquaintance, a divorced philanthropist looking to fund women's initiatives. A week later, I had my first major client and a massive grant. My phone buzzed. An incoming email. A letter from the Washington State Penitentiary. Liam's name was on the return line. I didn't open it. I took a screenshot, forwarded it to Diana with the text. "Handle this, please," and then opened my laptop to review fabric swatches for a client's new apartment. Liam's sentencing hearing was a formality. I didn't attend. Diana called me with the result: 7 years in a minimum security federal facility, plus fines that would leave him utterly bankrupt upon release. That night, we hosted a small gathering for the twins' 100-day milestone. Just a few true friends. Dr. Sterling. Anna the nutritionist. Diana. No grand gestures. As we sat in the living room, surrounded by baby toys and half-eaten cake, Aiden stood up and gently tapped his water glass. He wasn't a man for speeches. His words were simple, direct, and they silenced the room. For a long time, I measured success in threats neutralized and systems secured. Then I met Michelle. He looked down at me, his eyes impossibly soft. She taught me that real success isn't about tearing things down. It's about taking the broken pieces and building something entirely new. She is the strongest architect I know. He raised his glass. To Michelle. And to the future. We are building it one day, one project, one tiny, perfect smile at a time. Tears pricked my eyes. It wasn't just a toast. It was a testament. The quiet operator had built me a kingdom, not of walls, but of possibilities. And I was finally ready to rule it. 18 months later, the Seattle Urban Housing Alliance Gala was in full swing at the Museum of History and Industry, MOHI. All gleaming glass and stunning views of Puget Sound. I stood at the podium, the warm spotlight on my skin. My simple emerald green dress made me feel like I was wearing armor. And so, the Grace Place model proves that transitional housing does not have to feel transitional, I said into the microphone, my voice ringing clear across the silent ballroom. The massive screen behind me displayed before and after photos of the first development I had spearheaded. A row of blighted townhomes in Queen Anne, transformed into a bright, secure sanctuary for 4 families transitioning out of shelters. It is about restoring dignity. One safe, beautifully designed front door at a time. The applause was genuine and thunderous. I caught Aiden's eye at his table near the back. He wasn't clapping loudly, he simply gave me a slow, deep nod. His pride was a tangible force across the room. My husband, the ghost in the machine, had stepped out of the shadows to sit in a banquet chair and watch me shine. After the speech, a tide of people surrounded me. A city councilwoman pressed a card into my hand. Your data on recidivism rates is staggering, Michelle. We need to talk about the Ballard Initiative. A news producer for a national network asked for an interview. I smiled and routed them all to my full-time assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, whom I had hired directly out of one of Haven Project's job training programs. I finally pushed my way through the crowd to Aiden. He stood up, pulling out my chair. You were magnificent, he murmured, his lips brushing my temple. I was terrified, I whispered back, letting the adrenaline tremor show only for him. You owned the room exactly like I knew you would. He glanced at the departing councilwoman. She's a tough negotiator. You'll handle her. We'll handle her. I corrected, squeezing his hand. Our partnership was the bedrock everything rested upon. He had casually introduced me to the structural engineer who made the innovative shared space design of Grace Place possible. I had casually met the grant writer at a charity function he suggested we attend. He was the invisible wind in my sails, and he never once tried to grab the steering wheel. Later, in the SUV on the ride home, with the babysitter following in a separate car with the sleeping twins, Aiden was quiet for a long moment. I saw Liam today. The name was a jolt of cold air in the warm interior of the car. What? No. He's in Walla Walla, in person. In a surveillance report. He's out. Released early for good behavior and prison overcrowding. Served just over 4 years, a strange, absolute calm settled over me. The fear was entirely gone. Where is he? In Tukwila. Working under the table on a non-union construction crew. Living in a weekly motel. He's a ghost. Aiden looked at me. It's finished. Michelle. Truly. I looked out the window at the glittering Seattle skyline. The man who had tried to break me was living in a motel room. I had just received a standing ovation at a museum. Aiden's hand found mine in the dark. Let him go, Aiden said softly. I already had. Life became a constant, beautiful balancing act between joy and chaos. Grace, with her fierce red curls and determined scowl, was a miniature general. Samuel, quiet and observant, was the spitting image of his father. And our surprise, little Hope, arrived when the twins were 2, a happy accident that completed our loud, love-filled home. Haven projects exploded. We won architectural awards. I was asked to consult on a federal housing program for military families. Getting an email from the White House Office of Public Engagement was a surreal, blinding moment. I would be one of several advisors, but the title was real: Michelle McCoy, Special Advisor on Transitional Housing and Community Design. I showed the email to Aiden on my laptop. He read it, then pulled me into a fierce, bone-crushing hug. I have never been prouder of anyone in my entire life, he said, his voice thick. You aren't bothered? I teased. It'll mean trips to D.C. Time away from home. He laughed, a real, free sound. Michelle, watching you build this, watching you use that brilliant mind and that massive heart. It is the best investment I have ever made. The only one that matters. The night before my first trip to D.C., we were in the kitchen. I was packing a diaper bag. Hope was coming with me, along with a nanny. Aiden was cleaning up after dinner. Do you ever think about it? I asked, folding a tiny sweater. What would have happened if we had met earlier? Before Liam. Before Sarah. He stopped, the dish towel in his hand. He turned and leaned against the sink. No, he said firmly. I wasn't ready then. You weren't ready. The broken roads brought us exactly to this kitchen. To them. He nodded toward the baby monitor, showing 3 sleeping children. I wouldn't change a single step. That was the heart of it all. Our love wasn't a fairy tale beginning. It was a midlife masterpiece, constructed from the solid, weathered materials of loss, resilience, and hard-won trust. A few weeks later, a profile on Aiden appeared in a major national business magazine. The journalist had somehow managed to pierce his legendary privacy. The headline read, "The billionaire in the background, the reclusive founder of McCoy Strategic Talks Threat Assessment and Second Chances." There was a photo of him, wearing his usual intense, evaluating expression. Near the end of the article, the journalist asked, with a corporate valuation now estimated in the tens of billions, what do you consider your proudest investment? Aiden's quoted response was simple: my wife's design firm. A 300% ROI, measured purely in human happiness. I read it sitting at my desk, tears blurring the text. He hadn't told me he said it. He had simply proved to me, every single day, that he meant it. The final echo of the past fell away a month later. I was in a studio in Bellevue, recording a segment for a local morning show about Haven projects. During a commercial break, a production assistant approached me, looking nervous. "Mrs. McCoy, there is a man outside. He says he knows you. He's asking for 5 minutes. He looks rough." A cold certainty settled in my stomach. "What's his name?" "Liam," she said. I felt a surge, not of fear, but of profound, exhausting annoyance. I glanced toward the studio doors. My security detail, a discreet pair of Aiden's men, was stationed just outside. I was safe. More than safe. I was in total control. "Tell him I am unavailable," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "And if he does not leave the premises immediately, my security team will escort him off the property." Then, the police. The assistant hurried away. I took a deep breath, smoothed the lapels of my blazer, and turned back to the anchor with a bright, professional smile. "Sorry about that. We can continue later." Marcus, my head of security, a stoic, massive man, confirmed it. "It was him, ma'am. He left as soon as we approached the glass. He won't be back." I nodded. I knew he wouldn't. The man who had once held all the power was now just a sad ghost from another lifetime. And I was far too busy building the future to let myself be haunted by him. The gnat had been swatted, and I hadn't even needed to raise my hand. 5 years later. "Mom, Sam took my geodesic dome prototype." I looked up from the blueprints I was reviewing on my iPad to see Grace, now a fiercely intelligent 5-year-old with a wild mane of auburn curls, standing with her hands on her hips. Behind her, Samuel, calm and methodical, was assembling the wooden blocks into a surprisingly stable structure. "It isn't a prototype, Grace, it's a load-bearing arch. Your design lacked basic structural integrity." I hid a smile. "Sam, give your sister 2 blocks back." "Grace, explain why you need them. Use your words, not your volume." Aiden's voice drifted in from the doorway of our home office, now a massive, sun-drenched addition we had built onto the house. "The UN account is closed. Their security audit passed at 99.7%. I am officially semi-retired as of 5 minutes ago." He leaned against the doorframe, observing the chaos with the serene satisfaction that had become his natural state. Hope, our 3-year-old tornado, ran past his legs clutching a stuffed dog. "Daddy." Ranger is hungry. The real Ranger, his muzzle now entirely gray, an elder statesman of a dog, lifted his head from his orthopedic bed, thumped his tail once against the floor, and went back to sleep. This was our life. A beautiful, noisy, profoundly meaningful chaos. My firm, McCoy Anderson Designs, I had kept my maiden name professionally. As a nod to the road I had walked to get here, now had 12 full-time employees and a 2-year waitlist. We specialized in transitional, trauma-informed design, a phrase I had coined that was now being written about in architectural digests. The White House project had birthed a nationwide initiative, and I had just returned from guest lecturing at Harvard. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when my assistant's name flashed on my phone. "Michelle, I have the final numbers for the Grace Place expansion in Ballard. The city council approved the full funding block." A warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the coffee. "That's the 3rd one, Chloe. Send me the docs." Aiden came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "Another one? Another one. 20 more families get a real start." I turned in his arms. "Semi-retired. What exactly does that mean for you?" "It means I am the director of family logistics for McCoy Anderson," he said, kissing my forehead. "And that I can turn down any contract that takes me away from bedtime stories. I've delegated the business of saving the world to younger, highly capable people." Our life was light years away from Queen Anne now. We had moved to a larger, though equally unostentatious, estate on Bainbridge Island for the schools and the acreage. But the old neighborhood hadn't been forgotten. Later that week, we took the ferry across the Sound and drove to Queen Anne. The old street the one Aiden had secretly bought was now a beautiful, pocket-sized public park, Grace Place Park. The surrounding townhomes had been converted into affordable, subsidized housing for public school teachers and nurses, complete with a community garden and a playground. We were there for the ribbon cutting of a new play structure funded by our foundation. As the kids sprinted toward the slides, an older woman approached, gripping the leash of a bouncy Pomeranian. Carol Gable looked older, softer. Michelle. Aiden. My goodness, look at your beautiful family. Her eyes swept over the park, taking in the laughing children. The vibrant flower beds planted exactly where Liam's spiteful, ugly hedges used to be. What you've done here. It's a miracle. All of us. We didn't know about Liam. I mean, he fooled us all. That was a very long time ago, Carol, I said, and I meant it. He's out, you know. Living in Spokane. I hear he works the counter at a hardware store. She said it as if she were sharing the most scandalous gossip in the world, but the information possessed zero power to hurt me anymore. I'm glad he found some quiet, I said. And to my own surprise, it was mostly true. He was a footnote. A cautionary tale from another lifetime. Carol nodded awkwardly and wandered off to coo over hope. Aiden's hand found mine. No anger left? He asked. I looked at our children, at the green space born out of betrayal, at the man standing beside me. Anger is too heavy to carry. I prefer to carry hope. I squeezed his hand. Literally. Hope, don't eat the wood chips. That night, after putting 3 exhausted, park-happy children to bed, Aiden and I sat on our back deck, watching the dark, glassy surface of Puget Sound. The lights of the Seattle skyline twinkled in the distance. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we had met earlier? I asked, echoing the question from years ago, but asking it now from a place of deep, settled peace, not curiosity. He didn't look away from the horizon. Every now and then. And I always reach the same conclusion. No. I wasn't ready. You weren't ready. The broken roads brought us exactly here, to perfection. He turned to me, his face illuminated by the moonlight. The best strategic move I ever made in my life was loving you. Not protecting you. Not avenging you. Just loving you. And getting out of the way to let you shine. Everything else was just logistical support. I laughed, a low, happy sound in the night air. The highest compliment possible from a master of logistics. I rested my head on his shoulder. He called you a charity case, you know, that first day, when you helped me with the pot. I felt his chest rise and fall with a silent chuckle. The man they called a beggar gave you a kingdom. Not of money, I said, completing our old, private thought. He disagreed. His voice was a soft rumble. A kingdom of respect, of partnership, of a love that expands with every passing season, every scraped knee, every funded housing project. He kissed my hair. And the supposed prince turned out to be the real pauper. A pauper of character. Life's irony is its absolute fairest form of justice. We sat in a comfortable silence, watching the ferries glide across the dark water. The past was a closed book, its painful lessons learned, and its debts fully paid. The present was a vibrant, chaotic, glorious gift. And the future was ours to build together, one solid foundation at a time. The cracked terracotta pot hadn't just been repaired, it had been transformed into a vessel capable of holding an ocean of joy, pouring it out to nourish the entire world around it. The journey was the destination. And it was more than enough.